David Icke. He's basically like the Alex Jones of simulation theory. He has all this information that's very relevant, very real, and connected to a lot of perspectives that can help you see things that you might not have ever considered before. Like back in 2011, I think it was, 2011 is when I was introduced to David Icke. I was still kind of new to the game of, asking or critical thinking, asking questions about your reality. I didn't really know what I was doing or where my intent was real. It still is, but my intent at that time, it was real, and it can be real even if you don't have any grounds to stand on. I mean, as long as you are looking to do something positive with yourself and with the information that you are gathering, that's all it needs to be. I mean, you're going to bump your head here and there. I mean, that's the journey. But the thing is to stay on it. Stay on the ball. Keep learning. No matter how many times you're going to fall, you're going to get back up and do it again and be better the next time around. The thing is how complex this system is. It's easy to fall into a comfort zone bubble of just following another leader or following another conspiracy theorist. This is why these individuals are out there. Alex Jones, people can say David Icke, Joe Rogan. These are all like people who represent a stream of consciousness that doesn't necessarily mean that everything that the individual is tuning into them is based upon what their belief systems are. It just means that the depths of their thought process are usually created or limited by the individuals that they are following. That includes the information that comes about from these individuals. A lot of the people who are watching a lot of this information on social media, YouTube, so on and so forth, the mainstream media is a perfect example. If you just watch the news every day and that's your reality, then you are not only half informed at best, but you're misinformed because the deeper perspectives are not even present. They're not even there. In fact, if you were to question any of that, you're like an enemy of the state, and you're not anywhere a part of that program. This is what's happening right now with the transition, where people are no longer believing that the system is for the people and starting to question their reality. The system also knows this, which is why is amping up its next programs, whatever the program may be. It's amping them up with all of their headliners. So before I play, I don't know if I'm going to play this whole video because he just kind of like repeats his same old David Icke spiel. That was one of the main reasons why I started to kind of shy away from David Icke, is because it was just starting to sound repetitive. It wasn't grounded at all. The information seemed real from like only from like a poetic perspective. It wasn't grounded. Like I could see interdimensional beings. Like I talk about these parasites who are, basically holograms, or you can compare it to a demonic possession, but largely in reference to like frequencies and dimensions and the energy that we can't see, but we're still a part of, we're still an expression of. Like how quickly you process experiences in dreams. Like what are the frequency differences between a lucid dream and a regular dream? Like what's going on with the differences between being in a dream and being awake? What's going on with, when you die, or where are you before you get here? What's all this previous life stuff, and what's all this reptilian, shape-shifting, Mandela effect stuff? What is all this stuff? Well, the system not only projects a lot of that information and the answers that they want you to believe in out to you, but it creates this distractive sort of bubble inherently by sucking you into that space. So how you get sucked into those spaces is by people who actually do the work. Joe Rogan does work. Like he sits on his podcast. He has his secretary or whoever is back there working with him, looking up, whatever they're talking about, and then they show the information. And David Icke, he researches all this information. He's been doing it for like 30 years, and that's another like believable thing. Like just because he's been around it for so long makes it believable. Well, that's bullshit. That's some like naive thinking, but that's how a lot of people are. It doesn't matter how long you've been in the game. It matters what it is that you're doing while you're there, and what happens when the system makes moves. So, like I said with Alex Jones, same thing with David Icke. Alex Jones been talking about so-called conspiracy theories, sharing a lot of truthful information, but to what degree? To a certain, like, what was his intent? Now we can see part of his intent was to channel all of that information and that energy and that focus of the people back in to the system, the political system of colonialism, make America great again, the Western so-called civilization control grid, which we all know is the infrastructure of, or the platform for the New World Order, the one world government. It's going to be based upon the idea that these morals of human morals and all this shit is America leads the way. Like people come here for their freedom, where all these other third world countries, which are largely only third world countries because the first world countries colonized them and destroyed them and stole their resources, poisoned the people. But a lot of what is worshipped and followed and put on a pedestal today can be linked back to this Western idea of reality. And technology is thrown in there, Hollywood, entertainment, like it's everything in the United States is kind of like the pinnacle of artificial success or synthetic success, whatever it is. It's all based upon this materialistic, broken version of humanity. This is why constantly, like I said in the last video, the definitions of humanity have to be given to you based upon this destructive, parasitic, sick, colonized, like materialistic version of humanity. That doesn't represent what humanity is. That represents what the side effects to this separation from humanity, separation from nature. That's what that shit represents. So since that has been ingrained into our consciousness, we will accept whatever prescription drug gets presented to us by the same people who cause those damn problems. We will accept whatever they give to us because we have nothing else, no other frame of reference. We have no other way of perceiving this reality or our definitions of who and what we are. We only have what the history books tell us, and the history books tell us this destructive story of humanity. This is why everything has to start at slavery, everything has to start at Christopher Columbus in order to keep the Western so-called civilization at the peak of this idea of humanity, of today's version of humanity being the evolutionary peak of our existence. Once you believe in that, you'll have to follow all the technology. You'll have to follow all the belief systems of the people who gave you those definitions in the first place, which is why they won't give you any real definitions. They can only scare the shit out of you, distract you, and give you a bunch of toys for you to just live out your life in your distracted little bubble of ignorance and powerlessness, giving it away to the system. So David Icke is just one of the main ones that are out there. I would say he is the main one in reference to, he might not say simulation theory like David or Neil deGrasse Tyson or Bill Nye or Michio Kaku. He might not use that terminology as freely as those scientism priests do, but he does give that same sort of definition of the reality that we are in without actually saying it. This is why I'm so leery about David Icke, because he consistently avoids the human story in order to sell his story or his perspective of simulation theory. So like I said, Joe Rogan does the same thing. And in reference to what Joe Rogan said in the last time he referenced simulation theory, or last time I put it in a video, one of the things he said is that, yeah, what's going to happen when we all figure out that we're in a simulation and all of your memories and everything that's happened in your reality was just an implanted memory. So you can see what that does to history. You see that what that does to this reality as a whole. There's no accountability. There's no responsibility. There's just this empty, no different than the Big Bang. It's just, you're just a cosmic nothing. That's what the simulation theory does. It creates a more tangible God for you, in reference that it's not just this Big Bang thing that's just like a bushy hair old white man who represents God. No, now there's an intelligence. Now it's not like an evil God who's like spiteful and all kinds of shit. No, this is an intelligent God who created all of this for us to experience. And if we could just perceive like a brain the size of a planet, what kind of universes that brain could create. So they can just go on and on and on and on about their theories. The theories based upon theories, no different than the Big Bang, gravity, theory of relativity, theory of gravity, theory of evolution, the dinosaur theory. All those theories are you can see how the progression from the Big Bang created all of our belief systems up until the university system today. What do you think they can do with the simulation theory if they put the simulation theory as now the beginning? So now they've created a platform for you to have this idea of a God, which is your simulation creator, and you have a more tangible sort of understanding of this reality, but you also have this sort of nihilistic approach to this reality because nothing even matters, because everything is just you're just a hardware and software PC running around reproducing or seemingly reproducing more and more computers with no real meaning, no real purpose, and no real connection to a creative intelligence that is natural. It's all about what mirrors the images of the modern worshiping, which is technology. So this is why transhumanism is so close to simulation theory, because they need to bring in the money-making schemes, which are these, like put electronics. Obviously, they're remaking all these phones every single day. So, or every single year you get a new phone. Well, every single year you get a new idea of reality, or you get another toy, or you get another perspective of. There's another thing every single year. This is how time is manipulated. Like I said in reference to the Wizard of Oz last time, how he kept saying, "Come back, just come back tomorrow. I told you how." You guys should be grateful that I'm giving you time to speak to me. I should be speaking to you 40 years from now. That's exactly what the system does. It's like nothing in society is going to change until we say it should change. And if we say it should take 40 years to change, then we will do that. So meanwhile, in that 40 years, what do you think's happening? They're making a profit, and people are being sick, which adds to the profit. Elon.
Well, do I think that there's some sort of master intelligence architecting all of this stuff? I think probably not, because then you have to say, where did the master intelligence come from? So it sort of begs the question of, So I think really you can explain this with the fundamental laws of physics. It's a complex phenomenon from simple elements.
So what is life for you? Is it a dream? Is it
Is life
real?
a dream?
Is it a million D? What is life for Elon Musk?
I find as I get older, I find that question to be maybe more and more confusing or troubling or uncertain. I think particularly when you see the advancement of something like video games, like say 40 years ago, you had video games. The most advanced video game would be like Pong, where you had like two rectangles and a dot, like batting it back and forth.
I played it.
Oh yeah, like me too, exactly. I
That's
played Pong. Exactly, it sort of dates you a little bit, but yeah, we both played the same game. And that was like, wow, that was a pretty fun game at the time. But now you can see a video game that's photorealistic, almost photorealistic.
So this is another, it's another jump off of the evolution theory. Like I said in the last video, evolution theory can be seen as more of a bigger issue in reference to deception from like monkey nothingness. Because thinking that you came from a monkey is empty. It's dead. It's nothing. It's no different than thinking that you were shat out of the Big Bang. It's about emptiness. It's about keeping you empty so that the system can fill you with this synthetic bullshit. So all of these intellectual interpretations of reality are all inherently empty. And the intellect, like the Wizard of Oz, like the wizard said in the last video to the Scarecrow, you don't need, regular smarts, for your brain. The only kind of intelligence you need comes from the university system, my university system. And here's your diploma. Now you're one of the smartest people out there. And he gives him a diploma, which is required to work. And then when the Scarecrow is done, he says, how can I ever repay you? He said, you can't. You'll be in debt for the rest of your fucking life. You have your diploma. You got what you asked for. You got your... He didn't give him a brain. He gave him a synthetic version of a brain. He completely avoided the natural storyline that the Scarecrow was talking about and installed this thing, this illusion that made it appear like he had a brain. Well, the same thing is happening to these empty brain ass people who are worshiping the university system as the evolutionary peak of our reality. And when Elon Musk talks shit about like, oh, I used to play Pong back in the 80s and now we can have these hyper realistic video games, and it's all talking about evolution. It's all talking about simulation theory.
And millions of people playing simultaneously, and you see where things are going with virtual reality and augmented reality. And if you extrapolate that out into the future with any rate of progress at all, like even 0.1% or something like that a year, then eventually those games will be indistinguishable from reality. They'll be so realistic, you will not be able to tell the difference between that game and the reality as we know it. And then it seems like, well, how do we know that that didn't happen in the past and that we're not in one of those games ourselves?
Interesting.
I mean, could be.
Sound familiar? Sound just like what Joe Rogan was talking about when he was talking to he was talking to Dennis McKenna. It's just they have the same, they're selling the same story. This is propaganda for the next mind control program. And since you have nothing else to perceive your reality, you have nothing else to perceive your reality from, you only have what they give you. You're just going to eat up and believe and follow whatever it is that they say. And if you consistently just believe that, oh yeah, well, their technology and their university intelligence is the best, it's the best thing since sliced bread, then whatever it is that they are discovering is what humanity is about. But that's not. These fuckers don't represent humanity. They represent nothing but themselves.
Anything is possible in life.
I mean, particularly like things seem to be accelerating to something.
Fuck Elon Musk. And Neil deGrasse Tyson, like.
One of the things we know from research in psychology, as well as just practical matters in the conducting of scientific experiments, is that one of the lowest forms of evidence you could possibly invoke is eyewitness testimony. Which is odd because it's one of the highest forms of evidence in the court of law, which disturbs me greatly. Mm-hmm. So if you come from a lab to a science conference and say, this is true, we say, how do you know this? Because I saw it.
See, they don't want you to think about, they don't want you to believe your own eyes. They want you to believe in your own thoughts. They want you to believe what they see and what they theorize as what your eyes should be seeing. No different than the history books being manipulated for you to only focus on slave stories, for you to only focus on the glory of the Western Empire. These motherfuckers are slick as shit. And you can see how that's a belief system. It's like, oh yeah, don't even trust your own senses. You should just listen to what we're saying.
That's really the end of your talk. And you just leave. And then we say, come back when you have a chart recorder, or you have to just give me something that does not have to flow through your senses. Because your
Let's see, hold on.
senses is some of the worst data-taking devices that exist.
So that plays straight into the idea of you not being able to question the heliocentric model because your senses don't fucking matter. Your senses don't matter. The theory of gravity is what matters. The theory of relativity, the theory of the Big Bang theory, pictures, CGI images. Don't trust your own idea that looking at those images of space and Earth, don't trust that that is CGI. You have to trust. You have to just believe us. He's basically telling you a scientific definition of belief. That is what he's selling you. That is the religion. That's why he's a priest for the university system or the scientism religion, because they don't want you to use your own senses. You are only supposed to be a robot that just regurgitates what they tell you.
And science did not achieve maturity. Modern science did not achieve maturity until we had instruments that either extended our senses or replaced them. And Galileo, it's not an accident that we have modern science as I've described it, experiment, verification, these tactics, these methods and tools, began with Galileo and Francis Bacon, and Galileo was around 1600. That was the invention in that period of the microscope and the telescope. So it's not an accident that all this sort of came together at that time. So now we have people who are in the act of dying, and they come back from life, and they report on mental experiences. And that's intriguing. It's intriguing. But because it is in the realm of eyewitness testimony, you can establish it perhaps as a personal truth. But it will take more than that to establish it as an objective truth. And
an objective truth is he talking about, he's going to tell you.
Objective truth is the kind of truths that science discovers.
See, that's what's going on right now. It's you who is not objective. You don't have the capabilities to be objective because you didn't go to get your astrophysicist PhD. You didn't go to do whatever Neil deGrasse Tyson did. You're not objective. You're just a dumbass who uses your basic senses to perceive your reality. Oh, you don't see a curve? Well, there is a curve. Why? Because science, bitch. That's an objective opinion. Science, bitch. That's what his objective opinion is. Or his objective perspective is.
And it's the kind of truth that is true whether or not you believe it.
That's it. Whether or not you believe it. This is the separation of the synthetic nature or the synthetic timeline and the natural timeline. The natural people are not going to follow this bullshit. They're not going to believe these assholes just because they wrote a bunch of fucking books with a bunch of big numbers in it and took a bunch of fake CGI images and, constantly flashed them in your face. You'll be outcasted from society, which is already what's happening right now. If you talk about flat earth at all or the not globe model, you're an outcast, even with your friends. They won't even like that's how deep this mind control program goes. And it's not so much about whether you believe or you're challenging the heliocentric model or not. It's about how you're thinking and how you're believing. It's so ingrained into our reality. It's into our very emotional relationships with our family, with our friends. That's how deep this shit goes.
Okay? It exists outside of your culture, your religion, your political affiliation. Personal truths, if I may consider that, would be, okay, Jesus is your savior. That's your personal truth. You cannot convince someone else.
See, you already know what he's going to say. But the same way that he's talking about people's personal truth about Jesus they're trying to see, they use religion as the bad guy to make scientism the superhero. So they constantly bring this story back up in order for you to believe that, you know, whatever it is that they're doing is the evolutionary peak of intelligence in this human experience.
Jesus is their savior in an objective way. Yep.
The thing is, the same kind of belief system that he's talking about with Jesus is the same kind of belief system that you have to have with the scientism community. But he won't tell you that. Why? Because he says words like objective and science and quantifiable and, you know, like observable and all that other shit. Like CGI is not observable. Quantify, you know, running a bunch of fucking numbers for light years and 93 million miles away for the sun, that ain't quantifiable shit. You're making shit up. Our observable senses tell us that the sun is close. You can see the shadows and the angles behind clouds. And if you think it's 93 million miles away, then that's your own problem. The thing is, now I'm not even going to go. I don't even want to listen to any more.
To persuade them, you have to persuade them in some cases by war, right? Look at the wars that have been fought between religions that did not agree about who was their respective saviors. Sure.
If I walked on water, made you unblind, created loaves and fishes out of nothing,
that would be amazing.
I think,
and we would investigate that, and we would say, "Whoa!"
Investigate that.
Yes, we would. So it would be an amazing thing. It'd
be so awesome.
If we cannot account for that by any other known laws of physics, and it's only happening with you, when we'd see, we'd wonder.
Assholes like this fuck run around acting like they are the authority of the way you perceive your reality, period. That's what the scientism community is about. Acting as the authority on the way you perceive your reality. Religion is being demonized, and the baby in that bathwater is spirituality, your connection to nature. That is being thrown out in order to worship the authority that these fuckheads run around talking about. Oh yeah, we're the ones who discovered this, and you know, another thing, that backs them up is the medical field. Like, when you know the medical field is meant to make you and keep you sick. We invented all of these vaccines, and we invented this. He goes on a shit tear about vaccines, and he's all about vaccines, and he's all about genetically. Let me see if I can find that genetically modified one. I know this got sidetracked from David Icke. I had to reset this real quick. So this is Neil deGrasse Tyson on genetically modified food. If this is the right one, think about this. When you're talking about objective perspectives on reality, they don't even know how this is going to affect us or how it is affecting us. But listen to how he's selling it to you.
Modified foods are receiving from the public. It smacks of the fear factor that exists at every new emergent science, where people don't fully understand it, or don't fully know or embrace its consequences, and so therefore reject it. What most people don't know, but they should, is that practically every food you...
See, this is a thing they don't really say when they say shit like that. If you don't understand it, they reject it. Well, the same thing that happened that he just said is what happened when these colonizers came over to the Americas and saw the living styles of the indigenous people. They didn't understand their relationship to nature. They didn't understand their relationship to the Creator. They didn't understand their relationships to their culture and each other. They didn't understand any of that. So what did they do? They rejected it in order to install their own understanding. The university system is a version of understanding a reality, but for a profit for pieces of shit like Neil deGrasse Tyson. So they use their egotistical and arrogant perspectives and styles of sharing this information to just pretty much punk you and force you and guilt you in to just believing whatever it is that benefits their storyline.
Buy in a store for consumption by humans is genetically modified food. There are no wild seedless watermelons. There's no wild cows.
See, his whole perspective is based upon materialism. It's not based upon your health. This is what he's talking about right now. See, the biggest thing a lot of people have with genetically modified foods is that if you ingest genetically modified foods for so long, we don't know what kind of health factor that can have on us or our genetics. That's the biggest point. It ain't got shit to do with having like a seedless watermelon. We don't give a fuck about the seeds. We give a fuck about our seeds. If you ingest seedless foods, you will become a seedless being. This is one of the perspectives that a lot of people have in reference to genetically modified foods. But these scientists, so-called scientists, they can't acknowledge any of that information. They can't research any of that shit. They have to maintain your focus on what benefits their own storyline. So genetically modified foods, it's beneficial to the system. So they're going to use little lackeys like this asshole to make you believe that.
There's no long stem roses growing in the wild, although we don't eat roses. You list all the fruit and all the vegetables and ask yourself, is there a wild counterpart to this? If there is, it's not as large, it's not as sweet, it's not as juicy, and it has way more seeds in it. We have systematically, genetically modified all the foods, the vegetables and animals that we have eaten ever since we cultivated them. It's called artificial selection. That's how we genetically modify them. So now we can do it in a lab. All of a sudden you're going to complain? If you're the complainer type, go back and eat the apples that grow wild. You know something? They're this.
See, you can see, I mean, I don't have to go any deeper into how much of a piece of shit Neil deGrasse Tyson is, but this is a good video example of how the algorithm of Neil deGrasse Tyson is used against the masses of people. He basically intellectually punks people into believing his theories. That's not science. He's ignoring all of the other storylines and only using guilt and shame and your like materialistic desires of a fucking seedless watermelon in order to make you think that he's right. And that's the only thing that fucking matters, is if you think he's right.
Big and they're tart. They're not sweet like red delicious apples. We manufactured those. That's a genetic modification. Do you realize silk cannot be produced in the wild? The silkworm, as we cultivate it, has no wild counterpart because it would die in the wild. So there's not even any silk anymore. So we are creating and modifying the biology of the world to serve our needs. I don't have a problem with that because we've been doing that for tens of thousands of years. So chill out. Okay?
So he's basically giving you the same kind of perspective that people are observing in reference to like supermarkets. It's like, well, if we had community gardens all over the place where everything was organic and people of the community took care of it and they had access to food at all times, like that takes more work, but it's beneficial because you don't have to deal with any of the shit that's coming out from this genetically modified bullshit and money. But he's going to say, you mean you don't want to go to a supermarket and get all the Cheetos and Funyuns and Doritos that you want? Are you crazy? Come on, you're un-American. We need this. What are you saying? You don't want any of this? You obviously do. See, not only that, he's, like I said before, he's completely ignoring the real scientific concerns that people are having with genetically modified foods. It's not about us wanting a seedless watermelon or us not realizing that stuff has been adjusted or changed. See, another thing is the way things are being genetically modified today are not the same as people picking things to grow a certain way. It's a different kind of manipulation. These lab coats that are genetically modifying shit, like in Monsanto, that's a whole different thing than growing a particular potato in reference to like a potato that had spikes on it or something like that. Like, it's a completely different world. And this goes into the idea of the world like I was talking about before, the theoretical belief system. You have to just keep following them.
About 10,000 years ago, people found that they didn't have to chase their food around all day. They could grow it right there where they were. It's called farming. And ever since then, we've been trying to control plants and animals for 3 good reasons: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, how many cows do you think you'd see if they'd never been domesticated by humans? You ever seen a cow out in the wild fighting for its life? You think chickens will one day rise up and take over the world? No, I don't think so. Somewhere back in time, thousands and thousands of years ago, feeding ourselves changed from a little luck to a lot of science. We've been trying to improve that science ever since. Haven't we, ladies? In the United States, grocery shelves are filled with genetically modified food. Take a look at this corn. No blemishes, not a kernel out of place. Only in America, right? Well, not exactly. In Europe, if a food is genetically modified, it has to be labeled as such. Now, why is that? Is there something to be afraid of? Well, that's a good question, and one that's probably not asked often enough. We're getting more and more genetically modified food faster and faster. What is it? Do we need it? Is it safe? Well, let's have a look. Every living thing contains DNA, which includes chromosomes and genes. Now, genes provide the instructions to build a living thing. If you change one of the genes, you rewrite one of the instructions. So instead of Bill Nye the brown-eyed guy, you'd get Bill Nye with blue eyes. Some people think that would be a distinct improvement. But when we genetically modify our food, say by taking a gene from a fish and putting it in a tomato, we're creating a whole new species, one that's never existed on Earth before. So some would say, you've created a monster, a frankenfood. Others would say, no, it's still a fruit or a vegetable. I'm just making my lunch. Do you, domesticated wheat, take this wild wheat to be your lawfully wedded hybrid? See, breeding food crops is a lot like a marriage, or a wedding, a shotgun wedding, because the wheat doesn't have much say in the matter. But traditional breeding of food crops takes plenty of human intervention. Agricultural scientists have been tinkering with our food for centuries. That's why most of the food you eat cannot be found in nature. So watermelon, tomato.
Most of the food you eat that becomes you cannot be found in nature. Then what does that say about you and your body and your relationship to nature and this system that promotes this kind of relationship to nature?
Plums and corn bear little resemblance to their original natural species. But now scientists can take it another step. They can get rid of this wedding ceremony altogether and mix genes from species.
If you know there's a depopulation program for the pharmaceuticals, vaccines, and all that other shit, if you don't think that the food in the water, fluoride in the water, and genetically modified foods is a part of that shit, then you're the most naive motherfucker that's out there. Food like this, we haven't even unveiled what's really going on with genetically modified foods.
That are hardly related at all. So how does that go? Something old, something new, something borrowed.
A lot of that information in those studies are being held back in order for the system to consistently make money and a profit off of sick people and whatever comes about in the future that they're going to have to give to us. They're going to have to give us something to combat whatever side effects that we're going to have for a lot of the shit that's being sold to us without any concern or any kind of research.
There's nothing blue here. This is an organically grown papaya, a tropical fruit. This particular one is infected with the very common ring spot virus. Now, people eat papayas like this all the time. This is a papaya that's been genetically modified so that it has a tiny piece of the DNA from that very same ring spot virus embedded in its DNA. It's immune or resistant to ring spot infection. So which one do you want to eat? The natural one with lots of ring spot virus DNA, or the modified one with just a little bit of that very same DNA? It's the classic dilemma of natural versus modified. Is it good versus evil, or is it just another step in the march of agricultural progress?
They call their bullshit progress. This is another are GMOs good or bad? Genetic engineering our food. This is another, what's that? Kurzgesagt in a nutshell. That's another one of those sort of Discovery Channel, National Geographic cartoons, mind control program channels that are out there. They go around doing the same thing. I'm not going to play any more of that shit. That's just bullshit. But I just wanted to give another quick example of how these individuals are saying the same thing in a different way, in their own style. And the point being is, like I said earlier, it's the way we receive our information. It's who we're believing and trusting in our reality. So in reference to something like simulation theory, since we've already been conditioned to follow people and follow these belief systems, we'll be set up to believe whatever individual is put into our reality again. So like David Icke is a more complex version, in my eyes, of Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye in reference to simulation theory, period. Like, since you've already, like, let's just say simulation theory goes mainstream tomorrow. For the conspiracy theorists, a lot of people are going to jump right on board with David Icke and just be like, you were right all along. You did this and such and such and such and such. And he's going to be the next guy to tell us about our reality. Or they'll put somebody else out there like him. Point being is that the masses of people are not thinking for themselves. Go back to simulation theory. I wanted to play this so I can, let's see, did I get everybody? I did get everybody on this. It's Jim Carrey, Ray Kurzweil, Alex Jones. He talks about that. When you listen to Alex Jones' interview with Joe Rogan on Joe Rogan's podcast, the most watched one on his channel, Alex Jones goes off. He knew what was going to happen when they linked up like that. He knew, so he used that platform to go all out. And what was his version of all out? It was the same perspective that David Icke sells. Talking about these are interdimensional pedophiles or interdimensional whatevers that are doing such and such and such and such. And then we need to just do whatever he says we need to do in order to combat this. And he says those are the globalists.
Well, first of all, it's very clear that the classic Western explanation of how the universe was formed and how the solar system was formed, i.e. the Big Bang and all the rest of it, is complete nonsense. And even some mainstream scientists are now beginning to say that's the case. And I've written a lot in my latest book. And
sounds like he's getting ready to go into some flat earth discussion or something, but he's not. He's going to simulation theory. And the same way that he uses the university system as a punching bag to prop himself up and his own theories up, is the same way that Neil deGrasse Tyson uses religion as a punching bag to prop himself up. So it's all about whatever it is that they're selling, and they have an attachment to it. And the attachment comes, it's obvious when you can see that they never really get outside of their one little bubble. So like David Icke is not talking about the indigenous storyline and the human story. He's all about interdimensional perspectives of this reality. He's all about frequency, all about just this whole simulation theory. Is there anything wrong with that? I wouldn't say necessarily. It's one way to perceive your reality. But when you are a figurehead out there and you are only selling that perspective, then that's when it becomes a problem, because a lot of the other pieces of the puzzle in this world get pushed to the side. And if those pieces get pushed to the side, you might be stepping into another trap.
And talk about in my current presentations about the moon. Mm-hmm. And the classic mainstream scientific explanation of how the moon was formed, for instance, is ludicrous. Mm-hmm. It talks about the fact that a Mars-type planet hit the Earth when the Earth was forming, and a great chunk of the Earth broke away and became the moon, called the Wack theory. Mm-hmm. And what you find when you look at what are supposed to be mainstream scientific explanations, when you take it back, you find that actually it was someone's theory back here, which then through constant repetition becomes accepted fact here, when it's nothing more than a theory.
Mm-hmm. See, these are one of the things that make you really like believe and trust David Icke, and he sets you up like that because some of the perspectives that he has are the same perspectives that you have, and a lot of the majority of information that he's saying on here is on point. The whole thing is, to what degree? What is his goal? Like, what are his intentions with this whole thing? What is he telling you is going on here?
There is nothing in that moon explanation that has any basis.
Very similar to when people were just listening to David Icke for 20 whatever years, and then a year ago or whenever, he jumps on the Trump train. And people are just like, wait a second, you're talking all this shit about the government and how corrupt everything is. And now all of a sudden you want to think that Republicans are cool? Like, you think that they're the ones that are... It's no different than what I said in the last video talking about people believing that there's good guys in the system. That there's a good side to the FBI and a good side to the CIA and a good side to the Democrats and a good side to the Republicans and a good side to the mainstream media and a good side to Hollywood, good side to anything else that is mainstream out there. They want you to think that there's a good side to it. It's not. It's all about mind control.
In fact or supporting evidence whatsoever. It's just a theory. And you find this right across the explanations for how the universe was formed and what the universe is.
So essentially all the scientific paradigms are lies.
So this video in particular, the way he's saying what he's saying was what kind of triggered me to do this video and reference simulation theory, because he's basically breaking down the entire believable cosmology of modern science. But the thing is, now what? So his now what is simulation theory. Whereas the now what for other stories are like flat earth. Well, obviously, like that's one part of observing your reality, and then there's frequencies and all this other stuff. But the thing with simulation theory is simulation theory is also part of another mind control program. And that's obvious. So
what's been missed and what some cutting edge people are now beginning to envelop and encompass is the basic understanding that we are living in a virtual reality universe,
there
like a virtual reality computer game of enormous advancement.
There it is. Sound familiar? Sound just like Joe Rogan? Sound just like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Michio Kaku? That's why I was saying you have to be extra aware of these people that are claiming to be for the people that are out there, especially when they're saying shit like this.
And this has been missed up to this point by mainstream science for many reasons, but not least because mainstream science is obsessed with the physical. Everything's got to be physical. What you can touch, see, taste, the fine.
So my question is, he says that the mainstream science is obsessed with the physical. What do you think David Icke is going to do when mainstream science is no longer obsessed with the physical, but now adopts the simulation theory, which Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye, Michio Kaku were all talking about and are talking about? What do you think he's going to do? He's going to jump on that train. And whatever else that comes along with it, people are going to follow him following the system. Because now I can't say that he's going to jump on that train, but I am going to say that he's basically already on that train. He's already there. So what do you think he's going to do? What do you think he's going to step out and get into the human story and start talking about that? Like I said, simulation theory, the intent for that is to completely demonize any of the real history that's been going on and just chalk it all up to we're in a simulation, so fuck it. The computer program programmed me to be this way, so I have no responsibility for my actions. That's where they're going to take that.
Senses. And the truth about what the universe is lies beyond the five senses.
You quote Einstein.
Basically what it is that that's what it feels like. It feels like Joe Rogan, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Elon Musk, and all these other fuckers that are out there talking about simulation theory, they're basically like kindergarten of the new mind control program. Whereas David Icke, who is not seemingly in those circles, those scientism circles, David Icke is like first grade. Because at least David Icke is talking about the intent behind these parasites who are fucking with the masses of people for their own benefit. At least he's mentioning that. Where people like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Joe Rogan, they don't even acknowledge that. So that's why they are kindergarten, and David Icke is seen as like first grade. And since they're talking about the same stuff, it's more real in your reality.
Araki believes reality is an illusion, also, although a persistent one.
Yes, what Einstein said with those words, that this is an illusion, albeit a persistent one. Okay, so why is it persistent? That's the next question. And the reason it's persistent is because we are living in the equivalent of the wireless internet. Mm-hmm. This universe is, even mainstream science says this, is 99.999% made of something called plasma. And plasma is the vehicle through which electrical signals, electrical communications pass through. So the plasma is the vehicle for this electrical communication. We are living in, on one level, an electrical universe. And that electricity, information, is in the atmosphere around us. Our brains work with electrical communication. The body works with electrical communication to the cells. And so the body, I call it a body computer, is the equivalent of a computer picking up the wireless internet.
It's part of it. CERN, look at the timing of all this stuff, opening up interdimensional doorways, and even the CERN program. It's like unifying of all these nations in Sweden. Sound familiar? Like the Space Force shit. Like, this is what all this New World Order, one world government is going to be circled around. It's going to be circled around this being a simulation, and us having to, break, or figure out what this simulation is. So simulation theory is basically like the next, or the going into the programming, the code of simulation theory is like the next space race. That's how I'm seeing it. And I'll end it on that because I've said that a number of times already, but I wanted to give another kind of like solid perspective, my own solid perspective of David Icke. And I know I went on a tangent with Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye, but it's the same thing. It makes sense. It's not about what these people are saying so much as it's about how they're saying what they're saying and why they're saying what they're saying. That stuff doesn't really materialize until later on down in the questioning of what's going on. So, I don't know. Keep an eye out. People are already kind of like, David Icke is a piece of shit. They already know in their own way. I don't care. I've been leaning more towards he's a agent out there, especially when he was presented with the information about flat Earth and he just kind of sold his own, book storyline about it and didn't really research it. So he's basically still believing the heliocentric universe. He's still as complex of a researcher he is. You mean to tell me he can't question NASA? He can't question the heliocentric universe? It seems too good to be true. So, I don't know. I don't think he's as stupid. Like I said with Joe Rogan, I don't think he's as stupid. They're aware of what's going on, and you have to be aware of it. So, I'll leave it there. Thank you for joining me. And until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.